Hi, Wilshire. I hope this midweek update finds you warming up and safe. We've had quite the week, haven't we? I know many of you have suffered major damage to your homes that'll take months to fix, and others of you went days without power and water. So if you or others that you know find yourself in any kind of need, please reach out to the church staff. We want to be able to help as we can. Many of you also know, because we've had to cancel Koinonia Cafe this week, that the church also suffered some water damage from multiple pipes that burst, causing flooding in different areas of the church. Our facility team, led by Randy Crossland and Dale Pride, have been working very long hours to try to minimize the damage, but also clean up in ways that they can. So, send a card, a text, an email, and let them know how much we appreciate what they do for us in our building. We continue to work in partnership with Temple Emmanuel and Preston Hollow Presbyterian to serve our neighbors in Vickery Meadows, many of whom are still without water and are living in damaged apartment buildings. The Dallas Morning News just this past Monday reported that families are retrieving water in order to flush toilets, in order to have water to drink from fire hydrants in the street. So the storm may have passed, but the needs in our community remain high. You can check out our social media channels for information regarding ways that you can volunteer, as well as needed donated items. Thank you to so many of you who showed up on Sunday. It was nothing less than a Wilshire response as we packed 10 full SUVs loaded with items that they needed in order to distribute to their neighbors, like diapers, bottled water, snacks, wipes, all of those good things. So thank you for that. We were able to replenish their store for this week. This week in Austin, two committees who oversee energy-related issues will have hearings to try to pinpoint exactly what happened. I'd encourage you to reach out to your representative and to share your story or the story of our neighbors who are suffering, and ask them to ensure that these hearings produce meaningful policy change instead of just trying to figure out blame. That will help make this type of man-made disaster to never reoccur again. And speaking of advocacy, starting today at the noon hour and continuing through mid-March, the Christian Advocacy Committee will be hosting advocacy briefings with our partner organizations. Today we will host Cameron Vickery with Pastors for Texas Children and discuss ways in which we can advocate for our public schools. So contact Abby Adcox if this is before the noon hour for the link and join us. If it's after, we've recorded the session so you can watch it at your leisure. Y'all, this has been one of the hardest seasons in my life thus far, and I know so many of you can relate to that. We are all carrying burdens, but there's no reason we need to carry them alone. So please continue making contact with each other and being honest about what it is that you may need right now. I've been working my way through a book called Peace is Every Step, a book on mindful meditation. And one of the practices that has emerged for me is a simple breath prayer. And I want to share it with you today. It goes like this. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. And calming, smiling, present, wonderful. Wilshire, sometimes you just have to live things into being, and that's where I find myself today. Calming, smiling, present, wonderful. May it be so. I hope you have a good week and that we miss you. Take care.
Hi friends, I'm so glad that you're joining us today on this last Wednesday in February for our last exploration of the parables along with Howard Thurman together. Today we will explore the parable of the friend at midnight and the parable of the unjust judge. my fellow resident, Jenna Sullivan, will offer some reflection for you on those parables. But for now, let's settle in together. Maybe be aware of where you are right now, how you're feeling in your body, if there's any tension. Maybe you're finding it hard to breathe deeply. Whatever it is, just check in with yourself. Let's take some deep breaths together, breathing in the very breath of God, and let us settle into God's presence together. Let's listen to these words from Howard Thurman. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall guard my heart and thoughts. There is the peace that comes when lowering clouds burst and the whole landscape is drenched in rain, refreshing and cool. There is the peace that comes when hours of sleeplessness are finally swallowed up in sleep, deeply relaxing and calm. There is a peace that comes when what has lurked so long in the shadow of my mind stands out in the light. I face it, call it by its name, for better or for worse. There is a peace that comes when sorrow is not relieved, when pain is not required, when tragedy remains tragedy, stark and literal, when failure continues through all the days to be failure. Is all this the peace of God? Or is it the intimation of the peace of God? The peace of God shall guard my heart and my thoughts. There are feelings untamed and unmanageable in my heart. The bitterness of a great hatred not yet absorbed, the moving light of love unrequited or unfulfilled, casting its shafts down all the corridors of my days. The unnamed anxiety brought on by nothing in particular, some strange foreboding of coming disaster that does not yet appear. The overwhelming hunger of God that underscores all the ambitions, dreams, and restlessness of my churning spirit. Hold them, O peace of God, until thy perfect work is in them fulfilled. The peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall guard my heart and my thoughts. Into God's keeping do I yield my heart and thoughts, yea, my life, with its strength and weakness, its failure and success, its shame and its purity. O peace of God, settle over me and within me, so I cannot tell mine from thine, and thine from mine. May the peace of God, which passes all understanding, settle over you and within you this day, friends. Let's sink into that peace together.
Till it's gone, they pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Well, they took all the trees and put them in a tree museum, and they charge the people $1.50 to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Bop, bop, bop. Bop, bop, bop. Hey, farmer, farmer, put away your DDT now. Give me spots on my apples and leave me the birds and the bees, please. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Bop, bop, bop. Bop, bop, bop. Late last night I heard the screen door slam, and a big yellow taxi took away my old man. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They pay paradise, put up a parking lot. They pay paradise, put up a parking lot. They pay paradise, put up a parking lot.
Coming from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 11, verse 5 through 8. And he said to them, "Suppose one of you has a friend, and you go to him at midnight and say to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has arrived, and I have nothing to set before him.' And he answers from within, 'Don't bother me, the door has already been locked, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything.' I tell you, even though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, at least because of his persistence, he will get up and give him whatever he needs." Another parable about persistence, also from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verse 1 through 5. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, "In a certain town, there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, 'Grant me justice against my adversary.' For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, 'Even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually come and attack me.'" The power of persistence. Howard Thurman warns us against a kind of persistence with God that feels more like pressure. We often have heard of a way of praying where we sort of bother God about things and put on unnecessary pressure towards our Creator. And Thurman tells us that we don't need to do this, that God doesn't need to be pressured into accomplishing our will. But rather, it's actually the opposite that needs to happen. We, in fact, need to be pressured and wooed and stirred towards accomplishing God's will. How does this change our view of prayer? How do we become open to this way of being with God, open to being changed, but also stay persistent, as Jesus asked his disciples to do? Jesus took prayer very seriously, and he reminded his disciples to stay faithful, to stay persistent. And Howard Thurman reminds us to stay open to the mysterious timing and will of God. Are you feeling the pressure these days? The pressure to make ends meet, to stay above water, to keep going when you feel like giving up? Are you struggling with processing all that our community has been through? Maybe you are still reeling from the blizzard. What would it be like to ask for God to be near you and to tell God the deepest longings and desires of your heart? What would it like to be open to the pressure of God? To say yes when God starts to ask you to change your habits, your relationships, your money patterns, your very life. What would it be like to say yes? To be persistent in being open to God? How can your prayer life support you in these continually challenging times?
Thank you for joining us today as we wrap up this series focusing on Jesus' parables. I invite you to tune in again next week as we begin a brand new series for the month of March. Until then, may God's peace be with you, a peace that is not limited by our own understanding or expectations, and may you be able to rest in God's love. Amen.